It is awards season. A lot of people think award season is, that time in March when the Oscars are on, or I guess February, whenever they're on, and the Emmys and the Grammys. But no, because a lot of those movies have to be in the old consideration pile by the end of the previous year. All these screeners and emails and invitations go out towards the end of the year. 2020 being 2020, things are a little bit different. So a lot of it is links and virtual kind of screeners, but people are still frantically trying to catch up on everything they missed during the year. So we're going to do a bit of a special show today. I'm here with Aaron Christensen of Horror 101 with Dr. AC, and we're going to be talking about 5 year-end, for-year consideration movies that have interested us and we think are worthy of talking about and possibly even recommending. So if you haven't had a chance to watch these, don't feel bad. Some of them have probably come and gone. Some of them aren't even coming out until early next year. So if you want to remain unspoiled, feel free to bookmark this video and come back in the future. But we're just going to have some fun and talk about some of the movies we watched. Now, the way we're going to structure this is we're each going to spend about 5 minutes. I'm going to talk about a movie that Aaron hasn't seen. He's going to talk about one I haven't seen. Then we're going to do that again. And then we're going to talk about an extended conversation of a film that we both watched for this conversation. So we'll have some balance. So my good friend,
Yes, sir.
Aaron, why don't you kick things off with a movie that you watched for award season?
Great. And this was actually not one that I did watch for award season. It was one that I feel like should be considered, uh,
Oh,
being of the proclivity that I am in the horror realm, and often feeling like there's some amazing performances there that get completely overlooked. I wanted to call people's attention to this film. It's a British film called Relic, and it is written, directed, produced, starring mostly women. Well, I think all women. I don't. I think there's maybe like one male character in the whole thing, and he's very much not a big part of the movie. Um, but is a kind of a haunted house movie. I believe it screened at Sundance this past year, and it really kind of tore up the festival circuit. And it's unfortunate that COVID has occurred because it would have been nice to see it in a theater.
hmm.
It's a really great. Um, it's both an examination of kind of dementia and aging, but it's also a great haunted house film. And what it does is it kind of takes you into the mindset of somebody who may or may not be losing their mind. Um, and it does it in a really interesting way, not in kind of a showy, um, David, not that David, I like my David Lynch, don't get me wrong, but not in that kind of like nightmare logic. It is kind of told in a very straightforward way, but there are things like, you forget where you are, and the room where you are has suddenly changed dimensions, and people that you were talking to are not there anymore. And I think that that's what I like. That's the kind of the most exciting thing about it, just kind of like how it takes these tropes and kind of turns them on their ear.
Help me
Um,
out with something. Who's in this movie? Because now that you're talking about it, I think I might have watched this earlier this year.
well, there are three main actresses. They play a grandmother, mother, and daughter. The grandmother is played by Robin Nevin, who is a London stage actress. Emily Mortimer plays the mother, and Bella Heathcote plays the daughter.
I did watch this. Yes. Sorry,
And
I broke
what
the
were your
rules of my own
thoughts?
game.
Yeah, oh, that's okay. Way to go. But anyway, yeah. So that, and I mean, the person I'm most struck by was Robin Nevin playing the grandmother, because she has kind of the the most challenging role, because you're not sure if she's entirely lucid or not, and she flips from completely vulnerable and sweet to just terrifying and angry, and all the emotions that go along with aging and losing your capacity in the world, both physically, mentally, emotionally.
Yeah, there was some really creepy stuff going on around that house.
Yes.
I need to go back and watch that again because I don't have a whole lot of memory of it, but now that you mention it, I'm getting like a sense memory, like feelings
Yeah.
coming back, impressions.
It,
Wow, cool.
it came out on Blu-ray last month from Shout Factory and IFC Midnight, and yeah, highly recommended. Relic.
Cool. And I'm glad that you're keeping it keeping the genre in play as far as the year-end consideration stuff. That's something that's been surprising to me is there has been a lot of not necessarily horror, but horror adjacent sci-fi that I would consider, top tier stuff in terms of performances this year. So I'm really excited about that. I'm curious to see how other people shake out too, if they'll get some love. So yeah, score one for Relic.
Yep.
Um, I watched a different kind of horror movie called The Social Dilemma. Uh, it is a Netflix docudrama. It's not a documentary. It's a docudrama. Are you familiar with the concept?
I mean, I believe so.
I don't. After watching this, I wondered. I was thinking. I'm sure I've seen docudramas before, but this movie is so weird that if I have, this may not be like other docudramas. It's documentary footage and talking head interviews interspersed with not a reenactment, but a narrative story that is meant to drive home to illustrate the points that are being made by the talking heads footage.
Oh,
I've seen a
wow.
lot of those kinds of recreations of like
Yeah, yeah,
historical
yeah.
events, kind of a thing, but this is a completely fabricated, like almost an after school special type of a feel to really highlight for people who need to get the information but don't want to just sit and watch a bunch of tech guys talk about how messed up everything is. uh I was really not with this movie for the first 20 minutes. It's only an hour and a half long, so I thought I was in for a long slog.
Yeah.
But as the talking heads and the dramatization really start to come together and then become more than what you thought they were going to be when they started out. I'm not articulating this well. Uh, the Social Dilemma is essentially about social media, its inception, its the genie getting out of the bottle, and how it is essentially changing the fabric of reality in terms of human perception. uh, Everything from election interference to the way people are literally addicted to technology. They make a great point that social media is not a tool as people conceive of it. It is in fact a drug that some people take in moderation, and some people it literally destroys their lives. Very compelling cases, some chilling interviews with the people who founded a lot of this stuff. They have the guy who invented the Facebook like button. They have the former Google ethicist. I think he's sort of a central character in this movie, talking about monetization and all the stuff that's going on with Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Some of the most poignant stuff actually happens in that dramatization of a family who it's like a mom, a dad, and two teenagers and like a preteen girl. And just watching the preteen girl interact with Instagram and how it affects the way that she feels about herself. Yeah, it's a it's a fictitious story, but you really get the feeling that it's authentic and based on like the research that people have done. Because I kind of follow this stuff as a hobby, but it's nice to see everything kind of condensed into one place. And I'm gonna watch it again with my wife and also with my 10-year-old son, because I'm like, he plays video games, he's not on social media, but
Right.
the addictiveness and the notifications and stuff, and that's now part of video games. So I think it's an important documentary to watch. It's chilling, it's really well put together, and it's kind of hypocritical because you see people. I would see people on Facebook with this thing came out a couple months ago talking about, oh my god, you have to watch this documentary about how social media is like killing everything. And one of the central messages of the movie is, no, seriously, you need to get off social media, get rid of all your accounts. And they're like, you got to see this, I'm going to share this. And
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I did hear about this one, and I got off Facebook, as you know, about 2 years ago, and it has been one of the best decisions of my life. Um, not in terms of, because it's still, as you know, like it's difficult to reach an audience without using social media.
Yeah.
I mean, I just have my website, my blog, but what I found interesting was that the myth that we get told is how if you get off Facebook, you're not gonna know what's going on. You're gonna be disconnected from people, and people are gonna forget about you. And I was like, so I stayed for years, and I would say I did have some of that addiction. Like there was a post something and wait, for
Hmm.
the validation, or make a comment and wait. And I'm like, all this is doing is sucking me in and sucking my life into Facebook, who doesn't care. Facebook itself does not care whether I'm there or not. And what I found, especially over the past year, was that the people that I want to stay in touch with, I stay in touch with, and the people that want to stay in touch with me, stay in touch with me. And the real joke was people that I was connected with on Facebook. I did not know important elements of their life because I had missed that particular post. I knew what movies they'd seen. I knew that their dog had thrown up on the carpet, but I didn't know that their father had passed away. I didn't know that there was, like they become an aunt. It's like, so it's like the algorithm is a big liar that you're connected.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's like, what I found is as I started reaching out with people via text, via phone calls, in person, and so I was like, oh my gosh, I missed so much of your life. And here I was thinking we were connected, thinking I did know what was going on. So that was kind of my big revelation from being off social media and only getting information from the people that I made contact with.
It's so cool to hear you talk about this, because I'm thinking stories like this might be the sequel to The Social Dilemma. Not officially, but I bet someone's going to make a documentary in the near future about people who, you know, cut the cord. You hear that in terms of cable. Like, I got rid of my cable, but now I've got Disney Plus and Netflix and Hulu, and it's more expensive. But no, people who walked away from social media and how that affected their lives, because I would imagine that your story is not uncommon. I would also be curious to see if there are people who felt isolated, alienated, and if so, what was their support structure like when they were on social media? Is
Right.
it a matter, is it a function of the platform itself or themselves, or is it a function of just like the people that you know, or how that works?
And
But
honestly, yeah, I mean, the people that I know who are kind of a little insecure about their self-worth, that look for that validation from Facebook, I feel like Facebook only feeds upon that.
yes.
Like their self-worth diminishes because it's now dependent upon the affirmation of somebody else, as opposed to building yourself up from within. It becomes completely projected out, and that leaves you with no self-control. That leaves you with no ability to build yourself up.
And it's also this idea of the, everybody posts their Joneses picture,
Yeah,
the kind of like, here's me and the family, we're, together and hugging on the holidays. We don't see 5 minutes after the picture, the kids are yelling at each other,
right.
the wife threw a dish at the husband's head or whatever, that kind of a thing. Not to say everybody's miserable, but it is easy, especially if you're feeling down about something and you go
Right.
scrolling and you just see everybody's happy. It's like, is it just me? And these tools, these drugs are designed specifically to pick up on these emotions and feed them and monetize them, which is just gross. But we could do a whole segment on the social dilemma, but I
No,
want to hear about.
I'm, yeah, and again, I haven't seen the movie yet, so you've just piqued my interest again.
All right, cool. So yeah, go. What's your next pick?
So the second one is The Sound of Metal, which is getting a lot of buzz right now.
A lot
Uh,
of buzz. Yeah.
and the actor Riz Ahmed, I believe
Mm,
that's how you say his name.
yeah.
Um, but I really was he was somebody who wasn't necessarily on my radar, but he is definitely on it now. Um, and I went and looked him up, and he actually had his breakout film, Four Lions, which was a kind of uh, a comedy about a raucous slapstick comedy about terrorists in London.
Have you seen Four Lions?
I have now.
Okay, I was going to say I love Four Lions. I saw that
And
right around,
as
yeah.
did we did an immediate Riz double feature. I was like, wait, he's in Four Lions, and I've been wanting to see Four Lions forever. But Sound of Metal is about Riz plays he plays a heavy metal drummer. It's a two-person band. Him and Olivia Cook are the two persons in the band, and he very quickly starts losing his hearing, and he essentially goes deaf, which when you're a rock and roll musician is a problem. But it also brings up, he's also a recovering addict. And, you know, he and his girlfriend slash bandmate start worrying that he's going to start relapsing. You know, they don't want him to start using again because that was a really destructive time for him. And so he goes to a halfway house, a rehab center for the deaf, and basically learns not only how to stay sober, but how to be a deaf person in the world. In the meantime, you know, his girlfriend has left him because that's the deal. You have to be at the place by yourself. I don't want to go too, but the thing is, like, you never quite know where it's going to go, but it always goes in a place that feels so honest and so genuine. And he's not necessarily a nice guy. He's very troubled, but you never don't feel for him.
Yeah. Well,
you're with him, you're rooting for him, and you want things to go well.
I'm sold. That's another one that, you know, I've heard some buzz about. You know, it's especially in this award season where there aren't, you know, there are festivals, but they're all kind of online and nebulous. You don't have that same kind of festival buzz.
Yeah.
It's hard to know which films to like zero in on or take seriously because everyone's talking about everything. But this one has sort of made its way up through the din, and I'll definitely have to make a place for it. It's been kind of on my radar. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go watch it. But especially, I knew it was about a drummer who starts to go deaf. I did not know that detail of the halfway house. That sounds amazing. So I'm gonna check that out.
There's two things I just want to say really quick. Paul Raci, who plays the head of the household, the head of the rehab, he's terrific. And he's definitely going to get my push for supporting actor nomination because he's terrific. And he really rides that line between benevolent caretaker and hard ass because, you know, like, he's trying to make sure everybody stays on the straight and narrow. And the second thing was, I was really pleased that Riz Ahmed is playing the lead and there's no reference made to his ethnicity. I mean, I believe he's of some form of Middle Eastern descent, because this could have so easily just gone to another white guy.
Mm-hmm.
And here's a guy of Middle Eastern descent, but he's just playing it like he's a human being on Earth. And I'm like, that is exactly where these stories need to go. We need to see people of color in these roles that anybody could play. So yeah. I was struck with Darius Marder is the writer director, and just hats off all around to everybody.
Cool. Yeah. Have you seen Nightcrawler?
I have, and I saw that he was in. I don't remember him from it, but I would like to see that movie again anyway.
Yeah, he was the guy that, and I haven't seen Nightcrawler in years, but he was like the second male lead in that movie. He was the guy that was sort of working with Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and he was also in Rogue One, a Star Wars story. But we don't need to talk about that movie. But yeah, all right. Well, I guess I'll round things out with my last kind of blind pick, and then we'll talk about the one we're going to discuss together. My next one is also about a disturbed young guy named Scott, played by Pete Davidson in the movie The King of Staten Island. This is the new one from Judd Apatow. And I did not really want to see this movie because I watched the trailer, and I don't think the trailer does this film justice. The trailer makes it look like another millennial screw up kid just being obnoxious, and he's just like, he's aimless, he does drugs all day, his hobby is just getting tattoos all over his body, he has no ambitions, he's kind of a jerk to people. But his dad died he was a firefighter who died in the line of duty years ago, so he's all messed up, and we got to hear him cry about it for 2 hours. That was the trailer. And I know that sounds harsh, but as I was having a conversation sort of about this movie with someone else, and they said, but his dad was a firefighter. I'm like, having a dead parent who died nobly does not confer greatness on the children. um, I acknowledge that is still harsh. But honestly, Judd Apatow has always been hit and miss with me. And I like a lot of his movies, but I find that they fall into that category of being too long for comedies, too ad-libbed. Like there's a whole lot of like, it's Seth Rogen and Steve Carell, just let the camera roll and we'll keep all of it in. I'm like, nah, that's a bad idea. I feel like King of Staten Island, along with being one of my favorite films of the year, no one is as surprised as I am by that, is also possibly my favorite Judd Apatow film, because I didn't see it as a comedy. Pete Davidson is a main actor on Saturday Night Live. Bill Burr is a stand-up comic who, in addition to being, he's done acting roles like bit parts. I think this might be his biggest, I could be wrong about this, but his biggest role to date. He's also in The Mandalorian now. But there's comedy in the film. There are a lot of jokes, but because this kid is so lost and unlikable and unwilling to help his situation, unwilling to accept help from the people around him, I'm like, none of this is funny. Like, it's kind of like if Train Spotting had a laugh track, that would not make it funny. But throughout the course of the film, he gets to know this kind of a pseudo father figure played by Bill Burr, who starts dating his mother, who's played by Marissa Tomei. And for the first hour, it's like a little over 2 hours of this movie, I was thinking, can we just have Marissa Tomei and Bill Burr in a comedy by themselves as two like middle-aged folks who are, come from, broken up marriages for whatever reason, are finding each other. And Pete Davidson is the screw up son who shows up for like 2 scenes and goes away instead of the other way. But by the end of the movie, when all these relationships go to places that, to what you were saying, are not expected, they're not typical of what you see in a Hollywood dramedy, I was really kind of in love with it. And I like that it ends on a hopeful but ambiguous and not tied up in a bow for everybody note.
That's great. No, I same as you. I was kind of like, the poster art was not selling me. The trailer was not selling me, because I saw it. I think I saw it show up on like Redbox ads or something. That was how it first got on my radar. But yeah, I had no interest at all. And then suddenly it was being, submitted for your consideration. I was kind of like, I guess. It was funny. You were talking earlier, like the horror adjacent, like Elizabeth Moss is being touted for Best Actress for her turn in The Invisible Man, from earlier this year, the Lee Whannell film. And I mean, I would love to see that happen, just because I think she did a great job, and it would be nice to see somebody in a horror film get some critical love. But yeah, it's funny, the things that kind of like, I love it when people have the balls to push for a genuine like recognition, because that's the one thing I'm really realizing this year is there's almost a level playing field, and it depends on who's willing to push harder. Because you don't have to spend the money to get it into the theaters now. It's about, can I reach the people who are going to make these nominations?
Yeah. And it was, I was talking to my friend and colleague, David Fowley, of Keeping It Real, about The King of Staten Island. He's the one who kind of convinced me to actually give it a chance, because I think we were talking about The Mandalorian, because Bill Burr was a guest star on it last week. And he was saying how great he was in King of Staten Island. I'm like, really? And not that I don't like him, it's just that anybody recommending anything about that movie, I was just kind of scratching my head. But yeah, after coming out of my room yesterday watching it, sitting down to dinner, my wife was like, "So what did you think?" And I said, "That is on my list of the best things I've seen all year. Not perfect, and I think I need to watch it again, which I probably will with her because she really wanted to see it, but because of time, we couldn't watch it together. But I would
Mhm.
definitely watch it again. I would definitely watch it again soon, and I am eager to see it with the emotional momentum of that second hour, if that carries me through the first hour in a much gentler way, because I was like, this is really good. I'm not laughing, but I can see where it's kind of going. But now that I know where, where it ends up, if I'm like, oh, this was part of a master plan that I just couldn't see because I was being grumpy old critic man. Yes.
But yeah, I'm keen. I'm keen to check it out now. So well done.
Awesome. Well, so that brings us to the movie that we both watched. I watched it this morning, very early. This was definitely not the right movie for me to watch at this particular point in my life.
I was wondering.
It's called Nomadland. Not to be confused with the Pierce Brosnan movie Nomads, from
No.
1986. But Frances McDormand stars in a movie by, I want to say it's first time director Chloe Zhao.
Not first time director.
No,
Not
she's
first time
not.
director.
Okay, maybe got her mixed up with someone else. But it's based on a book, which, from what I understand, it was written by a journalist. I've not read the book. It was it From what I read on Amazon, the description, it sounds like it was kind of like journalism about people during the recession, kind of hitting the road for various reasons and telling their stories. So this movie is not that. It is very much about Frances McDormand playing a character named, my gosh, I'm blanking on it. I
Well,
had it
now I'm gonna
just.
have to call on the internet because I don't remember.
No, it's the social dilemma. Do we look? Oh, Fern. Yes.
This isn't social media. This is like actual knowledge.
Nice. Yeah, it's Fern. I kept thinking Fran for like in my head, but no, it's Fern. So the backstory is, in 2011, there was a sheetrock industry in a town called Empire, Nevada. That industry dried up and went away, and within months, Empire, Nevada, also, like, everybody left because they all got fired or they couldn't stay there, and they actually, this is a crazy fact, lost their zip code.
Yeah, yeah,
We
yeah.
learned
They're
this in
close.
the opening minute of the film. And so Fern had lost her husband, who had worked for years at the sheetrock company, and I think she had as well, in possibly an administrative capacity. So she's just living in a van, kind of traveling around, getting to know other, like, van dwellers. And the journalistic aspect of this, it almost plays like a docudrama, because there are a lot of her going around talking to people, a lot of them elderly folks, about what their situation is and how they ended up where they are and what they feel about it. A lot of great faces in this movie. I've not had any time to do research because I just watched it a few hours ago, but it's one of those things where it feels like, if these aren't professional actors, they could very well just be salt of the earth folks who maybe even are living the situation that, maybe even just telling their real stories in this fictitious context, acting alongside Frances McDormand. But when I say it's not the right movie for me to watch right now, it's no secret that I lost my job a number of months ago due to COVID layoffs, and it's been kind of a struggle to find something new because we're in this really weird economy right now. This movie is perfect for our times, although there's no way the filmmakers could have known that when they were putting it together, because this was obviously shot and put together pre-COVID. But we are in a situation now where there are tons of people out of work, just like during the recession. There's very few job prospects. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of social alienation and kind of shame surrounding things. So I'm watching this, and this is sort of horror adjacent to me. The idea of, like, no, really, how far away are me and my family from having to sell everything and move into a van and travel across country and eat on a, like, a I don't even know what you call it, camp stove, like a portable stove in the back of a truck. Um, I'm not really worried about that, but it does stir up these certain feelings when you're in that spot. Uh, I think it's a very good movie. but I do have some issues primarily centered around Frances McDormand's character. So I've been talking for minutes on end, as I am wont to do. Aaron, what did you make of Nomadland?
So what was, I mean, I saw it a couple of days ago, and I was immediately struck by it. I was like, because I went, is this based on a true story? And I looked up it was based on a book. And then I looked up who the journalist was and kind of her journey. I have not read the book either, but I've read enough like reviews of it, and I've watched a couple of interviews with the author, whose name is eluding me at the moment, but thanks to the internet, Jessica Bruder. And what I was so struck by was there is this culture of people who travel, and live out of their vehicles, and they travel and do work at various, like, I didn't know about this Amazon program where like Amazon will put you up for a certain amount of time if you come and work in their warehouse, but you can't work in their warehouse forever. And then they send you on your way.
You see, and that's the thing. Like, I feel like, did you learn that outside the context of the movie? Because I feel like that information, like part of it is in the film, but it's not laid out.
That is correct. And yes, I did. I like went, wait, what is this? How are they just like working at Amazon? But that's the deal. Like Amazon, and again, it's like Amazon, you awful thing. You are both benevolent and malevolent. You are using, you're using this cheap labor, but you're limiting it so that like nobody can actually have a consistent paycheck. And I'm kind of like, wow, are you a good? Are you a bad? I'm like, I don't know what to do with you, Amazon. I kind of hate you, Jeff Bezos, but you do some good things sometimes. So anyway, there is this culture that lives in this fashion. And it's said in the movie, and it's also said in the book, that they don't consider themselves homeless. They consider themselves houseless.
Yes, that line is in the film. And it's cute, but it's also a nice statement of dignity.
Well, and that's just it. Like, I mean, if it's a choice, and that's the thing, like what you were speaking to of these being mostly they are non-professional actors, with the exception of David Strathairn's character. All of the other actors, their character names are the same as the actor names. Like,
well, even his, even hers, his name's Dave. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. So yeah, so they're all playing themselves basically. David Strathairn's son plays his son in the movie.
I wondered about that because I didn't look any of this up, but I'm like, it's if they found an actor who looks like he could be related, that's perfect. But and I don't even know if his son is an actor, but he did really well. Like everybody in this film is spot on.
Yeah, I don't think most of them are actors. And the guy the guy big Santa Claus beard, Bob Wells, he is the guy that Jessica Bruder fell in with and traveled with, because he's kind of the leader of the like he is playing himself in this movie.
Mm-hmm. So it's a plug for both his RV lifestyle and Amazon.
Yeah. But what was interesting was that so that culture exists. And then there's the book, which is kind of an analysis of that culture, mm-hmm. which isn't necessarily, it doesn't necessarily embrace it. It kind of analyzes it and kind of frames it within some people are doing it out of necessity as opposed to preference.
Yes.
And then there's the movie, wherein we're not seeing somebody who's, she has been kind of forced into this lifestyle because she's a broken person.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yes, she has this strength and this, dignity about her, but she's also clearly broken, clearly suffering, clearly mourning the life that existed before. So she's not like embracing this lifestyle as the lifestyle she wants to lead. which I thought was an interesting. It's like it's three different nomad lands. Like there is the Nomadland culture, there's the Nomadland book, and then there's the Nomadland movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like you get three different, very different viewpoints that kind of cross and intercut with each other. Yeah.
Yeah, and I definitely want to read the book, especially knowing that it's based, it's a piece of journalism. It's fascinating. I do want to learn more about these people in this culture, possibly as homework. Want no.
He hasn't
But
lost his touch, folks.
but no, I think my issue with McDormand's character is this sort of idea of choice. And it reminded me, I don't know if you've ever heard, I don't know what they call it. It's sort of a joke mixed with a parable. Uh, I'll just give you the quick rundown. There's a guy on top of his roof because his neighborhood is flooding, and a helicopter comes by and says, hey buddy, hop on this rope. And he says, don't worry, God's going to save me. Helicopter goes on, boat comes by, hey buddy, get on, get in, okay, get safety. He's like, no, God will save me. And then I don't know, like a bird flies by or something like that, and he's like, no, wait, no thanks, I'm waiting for God. The water keeps rising, the guy eventually drowns, goes up to heaven, and he says, God, why didn't you help me? And God says, I sent you a bird, a rowboat, and a helicopter. This movie, Fern is constantly waving off boats, birds, and helicopters. And by the end of it, I had no sympathy for her character. Part of it is because you talk about the life that she had, mourning the life she had before. When she talks to her sister, she eventually goes to visit her sister, and her sister's like, I always wanted a sister, but you split the moment that you could, and you never kind of looked back, and you've been constantly running away and looking for something else on the horizon. And, there's the obvious sympathy ploy painting the nomad culture as the real salt of the earth folks. There's a lot of violin and piano music as Fern is wistfully walking around and like panning around this beautiful desert. And yeah, this is how people should live. And the dollar is evil, which they say right before there's a scene where they're dishing up food and someone's like, I'm vegan. Oh, you want vegan? No, I want the meat and I want extra vegetables. I'm like, that someone had to pay for that. Anyway, that's a whole other argument. But so she's constantly refusing offers of help, offers of connection. She just wants to be kind of alone to stew in her own juices. And that's not an interesting character to me. I would have rather followed that the last scene she has with Bob, where Bob is talking about what happens with his son. I'm like, my God, could I have just had a documentary about Bob Wells or a drama about his journey? That's more compelling to me than this fictitious character that was written oddly, unsympathetically, at least to me. Am I a Grinch here? I am wearing green.
Well, so the thing is, like, yes, I think she is a hard woman, and a hard woman to know, and a hard woman to care for. But that doesn't make her any less. Sympathy is not necessarily what I was feeling, but I definitely could relate to her, and I got how she got to where she is and why she can't open up to people because she's broken, because she's doing everything she can to hold herself together, and she feels like if she lets herself go, it'll all go. That was what I was getting from her performance, and I mean, yes, she does wave off the help, but that allows her to experience the experiences that she is surrounded by, the beautiful desert that she would not have experienced had she stayed at home with her sister, for one example.
True, but I guess there are other experiences that I think she had sort of convinced herself were not worth having. Like when she goes to visit her sister and there's that backyard barbecue and she yells at the real estate investors about, how they're all crooks and stuff. I thought that was kind of, I understand that in one way, but I think it's also kind of out of line because she doesn't know what they actually do day to day. But I feel like there's this sort of an attitude of, if I stay here in this suburban lifestyle, I'm going to lose myself or not be as authentic or whatever. But the thing is, when you have a stable foundation, you open yourself up to a lot of choices. You could go to therapy, you could not. You could choose to spend your days driving out to the desert and hanging out and experiencing rivers and rocks and birds, but know that you could go home to a nice warm bed and not have to worry about your car, your house breaking down and spending $2,300 to get it
Right.
repaired. And so these are all decisions that she's making, and I understand that people don't always, they don't act the way that I would like them to act because life is messy and
Sure.
hard. But as an audience member, I'm just sitting there like, because she's not just it's not just her she's affecting. When she, and this is spoiler territory, but she gets into a sort of relationship with David Strathairn's character, and he's clearly smitten with her, even if it's not romantic love. He feels he's made a real connection, but the way that that relationship is resolved, I'm like, she's not just affecting herself. Like, what was going on in the house? I'm tiptoeing around things, but what was
Oh,
going on?
sure.
What was the conversation in the house after she took the van?
But is that her responsibility because he's smitten?
I
Is that her responsibility to respond in kind?
not even necessarily in kind, but I think it's rude to just like take this hospitality you've been given and just leave without saying goodbye. Not that no one owes anybody anything, but
Right.
if you're like, I can't sit there and say, oh, I think Fern is a good person watching some of the things that she does in this movie. And
Right.
that's
But
my
we
own
can't
like kind of
blame her.
moral judgment. I get that, but like if you're asking me to care about this, I care about the performance Frances McDormand gives because I think she invests a lot in this character. I just don't like the character.
Yeah, and I mean, and then that's fine. I mean, we certainly have had many characters many lead characters that are not necessarily likable.
Like Pete
Um,
Davidson in The King of Staten Island.
but I feel like it's a genuine performance, that it feels grounded, and that we have that she does present a very complex character, as opposed to, I would say that some of the other nomads are presented a little more simplistically, that
Hmm.
we only kind of get one lens of them. Um, and like we get a little bit of like, I love David Strathairn, and I hope he gets some awards love, because I think he really does present a very lovely, complex, fragile, like there's a lot of stuff going on with that, and he doesn't have a ton of screen time for
No.
all of that to be conveyed.
No, and you're right. And I think with Bob and with Dave, I got from their characters, even though they have very brief screen time, what I was looking for in the Fern character and Frances McDormand. We spend 2 hours with her basically, and we get like 10 minutes with Bob and maybe 20 minutes total with Dave. But I was looking for a reason to care. I was looking for some kind of a real conflict where,
Mm.
and she doesn't have a whole lot of people to sit down and bare her soul to. Maybe she would have said, I tried therapy, or I would be open to it, or I would like to, I never really see her break down and get emotional over anything.
Right.
So she's an easy character to write off. I'm like, I would go hang out and try and help those people that have an indication that the rest of their life isn't just going to be kind of incredible hulking your way through all these different, dusty highways of life, and randomly meeting people, not making connections, and then just moving on.
But she does make connections, and I think that's where, like you see her make connections, like the kid that she gives the smoke to, and then later talks to later. Like, she definitely has a connection with Swanky. She definitely has a connection with her older friend who has a Linda May.
Yeah, and that kind of ties into the whole idea of see you down the road, which is kind of a nice sentiment. Bob's kind of philosophy about it's there's never a goodbye, it's always see you down the road, and I get that. But I don't. There's not a compelling. There's other characters in this film who welcome the opportunity to have a stable connection with
Yeah,
people. Either it's Bob who's looking back and realizing that he spent his time not invested enough in his family, so he has to create this other family to try and atone for it.
Right.
You've got Dave, who also didn't spend enough time appreciating his family, who now reluctantly accepts help to go back and take care of the situation and ends up being kind of readopted into his own clan. And then you've got Fern, who she says, maybe I've spent too much of my life looking back and not enough time looking forward. I'm like, that's a great insight.
Yep.
So what's the next step? Oh, I'm just gonna,
Well,
continue to look at my slide box and hitch my way out of town, which, maybe she has some kind of a revelation, but that's part of a movie that I'm never gonna see.
sure. But I mean, again, we've also had movies that we, like the best part is not on screen. Um, and
I
I
want
feel
to I want to see something approximating the best part in 2 hours though.
well, and that 100%. I think I'm a little, not protective is a word that I mean, but I feel like because that lifestyle of of getting away from belongings and getting away from the dollar and getting away from the grind and getting away from the rules that society has laid out for us, has always been very appealing to me.
Hmm.
It's not something I've engaged in myself, but as I was watching it, I was like, this is, I feel like this is a viable lifestyle that gets written off as vagrancy.
Yeah.
It gets written. I mean, and it's kind of like, wait, because they chose to live differently than you, like in some ways they're, illegal. Like you don't have a place of residence. And it's like, no, I do. I live here in my vehicle. So I get, again, having kind of grown up with hippie parents and living in Boulder, Colorado, where the hippies are everywhere. Growing up in San Francisco, where hippies were everywhere. So it's like, like that mindset has always been like, yeah, why not? Why not that? If that's what you want to do that. Which is why I was like, oh, it's too bad that we're presented with a character who is not embracing this lifestyle. She's, like, it doesn't feel like she belongs anywhere right now. So therefore she's adopting this lifestyle.
Yeah, and I was kind of looking for something a bit more.
Like you
I
said, I would love to have followed Bob around because that guy's got a story, but he's embraced this lifestyle in a joyous way.
Right. And that could have even been a good contrast to a character who say, because what it ultimately comes down to is, yes, Fern has had a lot of tragedy in her life, but because of the decisions that she's made before we meet her and the decisions that we make while we're spending time that she makes while we're spending time with her, she's constantly again pushing away opportunities to find something stable, find something, that is outside of this life. And again, that's a choice that she could make. It'd be interesting to see a character who was thrust into this lifestyle and who really does not have a choice except to join a caravan, because she's constantly separating from these caravans of, people that go off on her own. She really is a hermit, let alone a nomad. But to see someone who was reluctantly pulled into this lifestyle, learns something about them and grows, perhaps kind of like, I don't remember the name of it. It drives me crazy. The Viggo Mortensen movie from a few years ago about a guy who basically led his family, took them off the grid and was living in the woods. Um,
Oh, right. Yeah. I
I'm,
don't,
I,
I don't, I don't remember, but Leave No Trace is another one that comes to mind.
yes, yeah,
Ben Foster film.
right. But just kind of either unintentionally having to go into that lifestyle and learning to live with it and possibly even learning to love it, or turning your back as people do. There's the kind of the van renovation movement. People come up with these awesome kick-ass little houses on wheels and they
Right.
say, I'm just gonna chuck my 401k and go live on the road, and then to see if is everything that's cracked up to be, if it's a nightmare, if they learn more about themselves, that's fine. But this really strange middle character that has all this crazy psychology, especially when I found out that it was based on a book of journalism and all these choices in the
Right.
screenplay were fabricated by a writer. I'm like, no, throw all this out. Just write
Right.
about real people and you've got something that, I can sink my teeth into. But again, that's just my preferences and my prejudices.
No, again, I feel like I would have probably liked that movie that you're talking about a little more. Um, I can't fault Frances McDormand's performance.
Not at all.
I
No.
really liked the direction. But yeah, I would have liked to have seen the Nomadland documentary more so than this version of Nomadland. Like I can definitely say that. Like I would like to know the breadth of the culture as opposed to necessarily meeting them through this broken individual who, as you say, is having can't necessarily accept help, can't allow herself to feel joy. It's like it's a tough person. It's a tough co-pilot, let's say.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what's kind of frustrating about it, because it is a beautiful movie to look at. Again, just the emphasis on faces and personalities and this sort of realism within a fake reality, that I was just really drawn into it. So it's
Yeah.
like there's a puzzle piece missing for me from saying, yeah, this is going on the list. Yeah, definitely. I don't know what Chloe Zhao has done before this.
It's funny. The reason I know that she it's not a first-time director, because I was like, who is this person? And she had a movie called The Rider that came out in 2017.
Oh, okay. I did not see that, but everybody I know said go watch The Rider, and I didn't.
I just got it from the library today, oddly enough.
Hmm.
And apparently she's the director of Eternals, coming from Marvel.
Marvel strikes again, finding these independent directors to helm these multi-billion-dollar comic book movies.
I know.
And that's not a criticism, because
I mean
they have a great track record.
I think that's a great thing to do, is like grab somebody who knows how to tell an intimate story, because they're going to be surrounded by people who know how to tell the big flashy stuff. But can you give me an actual story within all of that? Because I think that's kind of what the heart of the Marvel movies are, and that's why they're successful, is because they are relatable characters. They are, stories of relationships surrounded by the spectacle.
Yeah. Well, this conversation, I think, has been quite a spectacle, and I appreciate. We talked about all the movies we're going to discuss, right? We didn't leave anything out, did we?
We did not. We did well.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. I know we both have more mountains to climb before this, for the whole nominating and reviewing thing is over. So.
And I don't know if you're going to have a chance, but I mean, if you wanted to do another one of these before the end of the year, I'm your huckleberry.
All right, maybe, yeah, before the end of the year. Definitely. That'll be fun. We'll figure something out. But
Cool.
Yeah, thank you again, Dr. AC, Aaron Christensen. It's great to talk to you outside the context of horror and suspense and Italian cinema. But not that there's anything wrong with that, but this has been fun.
Exactly.
All right, sir. Well, take care. If I don't talk to you, have a happy holiday, and we will be looping back on movies very soon.
Awesome. Have a good one, buddy.
You too. Thanks. Bye.